We're here for the June 12th meeting of the Assembly Infrastructure Enterprise and Utility Oversight Committee of the Whole, noticed from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. today. We will start with member introductions.
Anna Brawley.
Christopher Constant. I do not see anybody on the phone. If there are any members on the phone, please speak up. Mr. Myers, are you there? Okay, well, I will.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I think we have enough to keep us busy today, so let's just jump right in. The first topic of conversation is going to be the Port of Alaska Modernization Program update on the crane agreement. Please introduce yourself and take it away.
Now I'm actually on the record. Becky Wynn Pearson, Municipal Manager. John Daly's with me. Ben Bowman's on his way. And I made a couple of slides because honestly, I anticipated that potentially some new members might need to catch up to this. So they will be 100% for you review for you guys. And I'll just run through super quickly. It's a reminder of what is in front of you or going to be in front of you at the next assembly meeting. So if you'll recall,
I'll just quickly note for Mr. Myers, the slides aren't up on the website yet, but we're working on it. So apologies.
And they are largely a repeat of some images I showed last time I talked about this. Just a quick reminder that the cranes at the newly rebuilt Port of Alaska will be governed by 3 different agreements that piece together how we are acquiring them and then how they will be operated over time. You'll recall there is one contract regarding what happens when the cranes are to be installed and what happens in terms of damages if the not ready for those cranes when the cranes show up. And then there are 2 agreements between the municipality and Matson, which are the crane purchase agreement governing how the cranes are purchased in the port, and then the crane use agreement governing how they are used over time once they are installed. And you'll recall that in terms of status, the construction contract has already been approved. The purchase agreement is on hold pending a decision from Matson regarding how they will purchase those cranes, whether they're going to be able to repurpose cranes from another facility that are already currently in use, or whether they will be purchasing newly constructed cranes as the original intent was. And we discussed this when we talked about the construction contract and approved it. So that piece is still on hold, and how we finalize that, the terms of that agreement will remain on hold until we have a final decision from Matson regarding that agreement. So the thing in front of you right now is the crane use agreement, which we have been negotiating over time. We do not actually technically, we don't necessarily need to have this be completed right at this moment, but we're trying to put the pieces together as we have them. So we narrow the potential risks and issues related to this arrangement, and so that we are poised to move as soon as we do have everything ready. So at this point, we have negotiated through the crane use agreement with Matson. We have language that both parties are comfortable with, and that is what is going to come to you for introduction on the 6/24 meeting. It is an ordinance because it includes an and so it looks a little wonky because it's not the standard AM process for approval of a contract. So you'll have introduction and also a public hearing on it, but we wanted to tee this up in advance to explain what it is that we're looking at. So if you can recall, again, the major risks we were looking at with respect to the crane agreements, the first was operational flexibility. And that is the issue that we want to dive into a little bit today, because that's the primary issue with the crane use agreement, is the possible risk of not preserving sufficient operational flexibility in a world where Matson owns and operates the cranes and we do not own them, even though, again, our current cranes, though we own them, they are operated by Matson. The other risk is this damages sandwich about our contractual liability if the dock is not completed in time. That we're not going to talk about today because that is not actually addressed in any way by the crane use agreement. That will be an issue when we come back to you with the crane purchase agreement. So here's my damages sandwich just for fun. But really we want to focus on this piece, which is about preserving the flexibility. Do we have copies of the agreement to pass out? Okay. So this is the operative language. It's going to be on page 3 of the documents that you will receive, which describes the operational flexibility that will be provided to the municipality by Matson for use of the cranes, again, during their life at the port. Key items here that we carved out were non-commercial and humanitarian aid use is something that is preserved by the first paragraph. And then we have a long consideration of third-party commercial use that's in paragraph 2, which has a series of different carve-outs, no one reasonably withheld consent for anything by the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, or by FEMA. And then some limitations on transient and non-permanent use, which the port leadership team has determined is sufficient to preserve flexibility for use of the cranes for every foreseeable commercial use that they could anticipate being requested at the port during the life of the cranes. And so with that, I would turn it to Mr. Bowman or Mr. Daly to talk a little bit more about their comfort with this operational flexibility language, and then we're available for questions.
So the scope for the operational flexibility, we tried to break it into 2 categories: non-commercial uses, that's the DoD, et cetera. That operational flexibility would be the use of the cranes would not be unreasonably withheld, and that they might have to, Matson would potentially negotiate a fee for that, but it would mostly just be allowed, but with potential cost. Matson would also, of course, be having to staff the cranes during that time, so that's part of the justification for that. In regards to commercial uses, so that would be not something related to humanitarian aid, not something related to an emergency, but some other commercial use, it has been scoped so that there, again, as Becky said, the transient and non-permanent. So this is, if some third party were to come into the dock and wish to use the cranes, but they were maybe only coming once over a given period of time, then that use would not be unreasonably denied. There still might be a charge for it. Similarly, if someone came several times, it's 8 calls within any 4-year period, then that would be a non-permanent use. So an individual could have like a small project. I'm bringing up 10 tons of prefab concrete structures. I'm coming to the port twice over 4 years. Then that use would not be unreasonably denied.
Okay.
So then I think we're ready for questions.
All right, Mr. Constant, and then I have myself in the queue.
So all of this sends me back several steps before all of this to ask the question, then for all of these reasons, why didn't we buy these cranes? They're, in the relative scheme of things, small potatoes in the context of a $1 billion plus project. And so I don't love the idea of kind of ongoing negotiations on what would reasonable use be if there's a project that needs to come through and it's on Friday, not on a ship day, but it's the 12th time in 4 years. And so I don't know. All of that raises those questions for me.
John Daly, Port of Alaska. So for historical context, it's interesting to compare this model with the way it's currently working. So currently the port owns the cranes, and there was a condition, the South Transit Yard was designed originally for the transient use. So the idea was Tote and Matson would have their preferential use. There was an area set aside specifically for transient use. If some third operator wanted to come in, they could accommodate them. So the difference with now is that Matson will own the cranes. There's some preservation of that transient use, but the main difference is that they own the cranes. One of the primary reasons for going that route is that funding is extremely difficult for cranes, especially with the Buy America clauses. So almost all cranes are made in Asia. Most of them are ZPMC in China. And there's a bunch of, if you search on the internet, there's tons and tons of stuff about the Buy America for cranes. So that was one of the primary things, is if we have federal funding, it has Buy America clauses, and it's very difficult to fold that in. But you're correct that there's a difference in the model between what's being done now, the way it's operated, where the city owns the cranes and has provisions for transit use, and the way we're going forward, which Matson will own the cranes and have provision for transit use. That's the way it is.
And if I might add something just to Mr. Daly's explanation, I know this is a decision, a structure that was kind of in place when we came into this conundrum, but as we picked up the pieces, it did make sense because of the anticipated about $120 million expense associated with the cranes purchase and transport and installation, and the challenge of accounting for that in the uniform surcharge environment. That would be that. If we were to carry that cost, then that gets folded into the uniform surcharge structure of financing for the port. And these are clearly going to be used by one specific user. It sets a precedent for how this then is, addressed in the future. Should we eventually install cranes on the second terminal? I know that there are still some concerns about operational usage and whether we are accommodating the type of flexibility that we need at the port for the municipality and for the state. But we felt comfortable with the fact that this is a paradigm that is in use elsewhere in the Matson system of ports. This is something that was essentially a win-win. It's preferable for them. It was also, again, financially preferable for us to maintain the balance of that uniform surcharge structure and kind of the quality of what we're producing and financing for the various users of the port.
So I want to jump there real
Yeah.
quick and just say that I still don't believe that we actually have a fair and equitable tariff. The unified tariff is being more heavily paid by the roll-on, roll-off operators because of the infrastructure needed to pay for the lift-on, lift-off facilities, even without the cranes. And so this feels like a doubling down of the protection of Matson's interests, the lift-on, lift-off, and the cranes. And it does seem to provide, except for 8 uses, a monopoly for them to maintain their position on that dock. So I continue to have the same reservations. And while I don't understand how the Buy America is different for them than for us in the context of this, that is a reason, I guess, but it doesn't seem very compelling.
If I might, to that point, the issue is they're not receiving a federal grant for the project. So those Buy America restrictions are imposed by virtue of the use of federal dollars on the project. And so Matson, as a company not receiving federal dollars for the construction of the project, is thus not bound by those restrictions in the way that we are.
And so are we then anticipating Chinese cranes that, looking at what happened down in Tampa, they were ripping out the engineering, the kind of mechanics of them because they were afraid of the potential abuses that were within the structures? I mean, are we just, it's okay because they're doing it, even though it's our critical transportation infrastructure?
I've looked into that a little bit through various meetings and stuff. There's a lot of concern about spyware being installed, numerous articles. However, as far as I know, there's little or no documented cases of that actually happening, basically none. So it's a fear that hasn't been realized, but it's definitely out there, and there's ideas that there should be means to check the software and do all that. It's mostly a lot of fear at this point with not a lot of substance.
And if
Really,
I
on
may-
the management side, that's not our problem in the context of getting them in, but it is our problem should any of it come to bear.
That's correct. And I would say, but the venue in which for us to address that is in the crane purchase agreement. To the extent we want to limit or present certain indemnity or liability provisions regarding what happens if cranes are purchased from a location where there's some kind of internet security issue that comes with them. That's something that we should be incorporating into that agreement regarding the purchase to protect the municipality. I'd also say Mr. Favors here from Matson, to the extent that there are questions about Matson's current thinking regarding where they will procure the planes.
Yeah,
Like,
that's kind of a
cranes, not planes.
sidebar. Mostly
Yeah.
it's again, this constant conversation about we have a uniform tariff, but the uniform tariff does tend to benefit one operator very effectively. Thank you.
So I understand, the factors relating to the delay in the purchase agreement, and it sounds like there's still some unknowns there. But the use agreement makes certain assumptions about how that purchase is going to happen, right? So I guess my first question is, why are we taking up the purchase agreement now when we don't have a finalized use agreement? Excuse me, vice versa. Why are we doing the use agreement now without the purchase agreement in place? Since it seems we're making some assumptions, and my concern would be, are we in some way going to paint ourselves in a corner or create some jeopardy since there still are significant unknowns?
It's a good question to the chair. I think I know that we would like to move forward right now because I think painting ourselves into this corner is to our benefit, right? Like we'd like to secure as many of the components of this relationship now, such that we don't face either time delay or a significant change in the paradigm. Right now, we feel like we have a good contractual agreement in front of us that preserves what we would like. And the significant unknown that remains is simply the not to exceed purchase price for the cranes. We have a provision of the contract that governs our ability to purchase the cranes should Matson depart operations at the dock under certain circumstances. And the price for that is tied to the actual cost that Matson incurs to purchase the cranes. And so that is the only open term at this point. Otherwise, everything is settled. The assumption we are making is simply that they will purchase and deliver the cranes. And honestly, that's an assumption I would like to make sure that they live up to, and that we are structured such that, not that I have any doubts, Dylan, but that we actually would like to have everything in place to anticipate that that does happen. Right now, we do not, we have built this structure going forward as a municipality on the assumption that Matson will purchase and deliver cranes as part of this. And so we would like to have everything in place to building toward that outcome.
So with those assumptions, I mean, is there a language in the use agreement that somehow opens this contract back up to renegotiation or invalidates it if for some reason those assumptions prove to be incorrect?
Through the chair, I think you mean if there are no cranes delivered whatsoever?
Or in some way, yeah, if something very material changes about that purchase agreement, right? 'Cause I mean, as we said, they are assumptions at this point. If it's use agreement, and then a month or two down the road, for some reason, we find that the assumptions were applicable, are we now bound to this, even though we have a different direction, right? Like, let's just say hypothetically, again, nothing against Matson or their intentions, but if they get to a point where they say we can no longer purchase the cranes, we find that in fact it is now incumbent on us as the municipality to buy them. We still locked into a use agreement that favors Matson's use.
At this point, we will not plan to execute this until we have the purchase agreement in place.
So you're asking us to approve it, but it will not be
Correct.
put into effect. Okay. Mr. Bone?
And to clarify the timeline on when this would go into effect, the use agreement is designed to govern the relationship between the municipality and Matson after the completion of the dock and the Terminal 1. So this, even if we signed and executed today, it would not take effect until after the cranes have been delivered and commissioned, which is multiple years down the road.
So if we approve this agreement, how much flexibility will the administration have to make changes to it after our approval, between that time when we approve it and when it's actually executed?
The only change that remains open in the agreement, and we will have the agreement as part of the item, is the not to exceed purchase price.
So when we approve this use agreement, that language will stay exactly as it looks in the document we approve between when we approve it and when you actually execute it.
That's
and if
correct.
for
If
some
we-
reason there was a need to change, it would come back before us.
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Coster, are you trying to get in the queue?
That was the right question.
Okay.
I do have another question.
Go ahead.
So imagining the scenario where Matson makes a final decision, like the Horizon or whatever it was before them, to move along in other smoother waters, and we do have to take possession of the cranes, purchase them in some way. How long are the terms of the Build America, Buy America Act kind of subject on this agreement with this operation if suddenly we take possession of Chinese cranes?
Mr. Roman, can you speak to that?
So I'm not an expert on that. I would say the public funds, federal funds, is going to be difficult. The American Association of Port Authorities, AAPA, has considerable information on this on their website. They've lobbied Congress and they've had all kinds of different things that ports have had trying to purchase cranes. So it's a common problem, I guess. It's been across the industry, how to deal with that. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how to do it. I would just say it would be challenging to purchase them with federal funds.
That's
So-
not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, my question is a scenario in which we have to buy the cranes, period, full stop, because an operator has decided they're no longer interested in doing business in these waters. And we have received hundreds of millions of dollars of federal funding. And we have Chinese-made cranes on the docks. What happens then? For how long are those terms in effect?
Those terms are tied to the federal dollars, I think is what Mr. Daly is saying. We could not use federal money. So the way that this is structured, if we decide to purchase the cranes, we purchase them from Matson pursuant to the option that's presented in this agreement. We cannot use federal dollars to do that.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but what I'm saying, because we're not using federal dollars to buy the cranes if we were to buy them outright using the tariff. But because we're using federal dollars on construction of the port, we are still restricted from buying those cranes from outside of the US or without US steel. And so ultimately, the scenario is the same. We have these cranes, we have to buy them. We can't use tariff money because there's this Build America, Buy America requirement on this. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I haven't sorted through these things, but it feels like we are trying to dance through a loophole to make this work for ourselves in the best way possible. And it feels like there's liability in the current paradigm or in the least likely paradigm of Matson deciding to leave. How long into the future would those kind of restrictions be binding on this unless there's a change to the federal law, which, it's another whole conversation.
Respectfully, I don't think that is the question, because I do think the paradigm is different, because we're building our structure for how we do construction of the two docks, assuming both that we have received federal money already, acknowledging we received federal money already, but also anticipating and hoping that we will receive continuing infusions of federal money, potentially through TIFIA loan funds and also through CDS funds, that we're pursuing every possible federal avenue. And our assumptions going forward are that this construction is going to eventually involve several other infusions of federal dollars. So we are building the structure based on acknowledging that we're going to have to comport with federal requirements for everything we are paying for right now. I do think it is a different structure if we are purchasing separate cranes entirely with our own money or money that is not tied to that Build America requirement. So I think we can ask council, if that is the primary concern, we can build something into the agreement with Matson regarding purchase of the cranes, limiting the sourcing of the cranes to certain locations if we want to do that. But I do think it is a different paradigm because of the funding source issue.
Maybe we'll talk more about this offline. It just feels like we're doing this dance and we're going to get caught in a snare.
Just note for the record, we've been joined by member Baldwin Day at 10:56. Anyone else have any questions relating to this project? No? Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, we have an update from Solid Waste Services, if you guys want to move up here.
It's an apple and an orange with respect to federal grant money for a dock and the cranes.
Somebody pulling up the slides?
Ready. Ready?
All right, when you're ready, please introduce yourselves and take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of IEUOC, Kelly Toth, Director, Solid Waste Services. With me, James Armstrong, Solid Waste Services, Chief Engineering and Planning. And we're here today to share with you some information about Merrill Field update and what's happening at the Anchorage Regional Landfill. Just recall that before, it was last year, you approved us to be able to install some gas probes and also the leachate well, test well there at Merrill Field. And we have forward, we did the emergency procurement, and so we have a plan. And with me today, Mr. Armstrong's going to just share that plan.
Thank you. So on the slide here, just going to go through real quick. We're going to talk about Merrill Field landfill gas collection update there. Also leachate collection study as we move forward in handling the leachate conditions that are impacting the area. Then we're going to move on to Anchorage Regional Landfill and talk about gas collection there and the leachate collection treatment system that we're looking to make improvements to that's been ongoing for several years. So first of all, Merrill Field, the gas collection control system. We had some gas intrusion in some buildings this year that raised some alarms with the regulators. They instructed us to make improvements to the system to better control the gas. So the Assembly approved an emergency action. This is the result of that action. We are in the middle of design. We have received the phase 1 design drawings for the portion that's outlined in purple. We've reviewed them, sent them back, and we're ordering parts based on the initial design for not only that, but also the blower that's circled in orange to progress those designs and construction forward. So we're going to start construction here in mid to late June. That's how fast the project's going. Just this morning, I have an update, even on this slide. We've got phase 2 and 3 of the pipeline replacement. So we're moving fast. As a matter of fact, we're moving so fast, the parts are being loaded on trucks and trailers, and they're being shipped to Alaska. We're working with FAA and the airport to find locations to store this equipment and materials. Let's see. So moving on to leachate collection improvements. So Merrill Field was closed in 1984. It is an unlined landfill, so we're getting groundwater coming up into the field of refuse, as well as surface water coming from the top, creating a leachate buildup behind the current dam that's along 15th. So we're looking at getting better control of that. Over the years, the groundwater table, which includes leachate, has been rising and spilling over onto 15th, but it's being collected and pumped into the sewer system. So we're looking at getting better control of the leachate behind the dam that's stopping leachate from going out. So moving on to Anchorage Regional Landfill.
On that topic, Mr. Constant, then I have a question.
Yeah, thank you. So the graphic here shows a new test production well. What does the well do?
So the well draws out basically groundwater, but it's leachate because it's sitting on top of the impermeable layer that the landfill was placed on. And so as the rain has hit the surface and water has come in from the side from, there was a creek diversion. There's a large diameter culvert that's through the area that's, it's full, it may be leaking into the ground. So it's just a lot of groundwater is building up. So we have a production well there that pumps out from behind the dam and into a lift station along 15th. That lift station pushes it out to the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility Sewer System, which then goes to Asplund.
So,
And
go ahead.
if I may, this was the test well, so this provides us that data so that we can make further decisions on what we're going to do in the future. This is not a fix. This is actually a chance for us to understand what's happening.
Right, so that was really my question. And so this is like not quite the solution. This is going to give you some benchmarks to understand the scale of the infrastructure improvement that's going to be needed to fix leachate from flowing onto 15th Avenue.
Correct.
Right, okay, so that's what I need to understand.
Yeah, we're looking at what the drawdown of what this one well will have, and how that water moves through the field at that close proximity to that one well, and then we'll plan additional wells based on the information we collect with this test well.
So whatever final plans you're making, hopefully they'll be scalable in the sense that a problem today may be a bigger problem tomorrow. Who knows, right? So the analysis, hopefully whatever it is, it'll be scalable. So,
That's correct.
but thank you. That's what I needed.
Next, we're moving on to.
Just a second, we have a
Sorry.
couple more people in the queue on this, myself and then Member Baldwin Bay. Tying into Mr. Johnson's question, do we have a sense of the timeline for when we will actually see the fixes put into place to where we won't find the leachate seeping on to 15th Ave?
At this time, we're still in process of data gathering, getting the well totally operational, be able to get enough data collected so that we can make that plan. So we're doing that in addition to all of these other projects at the same time. And while we were well on track to get all of this data and have a solution for that, we then found ourselves in the January storms and then gas issues. So we're on the process of getting that. And the plan for us today was to be able to remind you that we did put the test well in that we had asked for and that it's in. We're data gathering, and soon you will hear a comprehensive plan for that once we're ready to provide for you that.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. And then my other question, which hopefully will be an easy one. Obviously, any activities in or around an airport have an FAA nexus. I assume we're doing whatever coordination is necessary to make sure that we're not going to run afoul of the feds as this work's being done.
Yes, that I understand the FAA and Director Malpass are both actively and often engaged in this process.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Just trust but verify. Member Baldwin Day.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to be sure I'm understanding the mechanics of what's happening. So we have an old landfill which has an impermeable barrier underneath. Am I understanding that correctly?
It does not have an impermeable layer.
does not.
So at Anchorage Regional Landfill, we actually have a liner underneath the garbage. In this case, Merrill-Field garbage was just put onto the ground. And so the impermeable layer that exists is just through natural soils that are less permeable than your gravels and sands. It's more of a clay that you find in the Anchorage region.
Gotcha. So we have groundwater coming up and then moving around that layer essentially, and then also rainfall from above that's creating this water issue. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is, well, it's from top and then through it, but yet it's groundwater is coming through the garbage mass
Gotcha.
over the top of that impermeable layer. And I don't know if there's any artesian springs in the area, kind of, but yes.
Yeah, it's Chester Creek. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. I'm just trying to get a picture of what's going on. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Then I have Mr. Constant again.
So this, I think, might be the first time, I don't know how I never grasped this before, that break, that flow that's been happening on the 15th is actually leachate. I just assumed it was water. I don't know why. And so,
okay.
The question that I have is, if it is leachate, since here it hasn't been confirmed, is there a public health threat that needs to be addressed? Because this is a substantial pedestrian pathway between the Airport Heights neighborhood, the Eastridge section, Northway, and the downtown through Fairview. And so if we have flow from the landfill onto the sidewalk, which I've seen a number of times, is there a public health nexus?
So we do have water quality monitoring that does happen there. So there is monitoring that's going on, and whether or not, I've not heard that it's been confirmed to be leachate at this time. So we will confirm that and we can provide that information for you next time.
Yeah, and I think what's more important is that there's a system in place internally where you get a red flag, yellow flag, then whatever has to happen to ensure the public health is addressed in an immediate sense. And so that way I don't have to think about it, because I prefer not to be in the loop on these things. I would just prefer that it works. So be in the loop if there is a leak that is substantial threat to the public health, but otherwise, that's my hope.
Anything else on Merrill-Field?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, now
Wow.
the regional landfill.
Anchorage Regional Landfill. So under the order of a compliance order by consent, we were directed to install additional flare capacity at ARL to bring our burn maximum rate to a minimum of 4,000 standard cubic feet per minute. To do that, we have to add an additional flare, which we're moving through design to get that done. We did some recent geotechnical work to finish off foundation design, and we're moving forward to 65% somewhere in July. And then that'll come out to be a bid document. And so the assembly will see that bid and then awarded sometime in late fall or, yeah.
Member Baldwin Day?
Thank you. Is this methane? What is the?
It is methane. Yes.
Okay.
It's landfill gas. So it's a combination of other, gas components as well. It's not just pure methane.
Okay. And just for my reference, what is a compliance order by consent?
So back in the day, in 2019, there was a compliance order. It was a court order by consent. And so there are certain provisions within that court order that we needed to do. We were provided with a timeline, and there are items in that we need to produce. And one of the things that we need to do is to increase the capacity of the destruction of landfill gas. And so we are well on track. In fact, we're well ahead of schedule. We had until 2028 to put this into place. And so the point is that we are increasing and upgrading our gas collection and control system upgrades so that we have, we're pulling more landfill gas off of the landfill. And then we're able to either push the landfill gas over to Doyon, which they run the landfill gas to energy plant, or it is destroyed in the one of will be two flares. The intent for SWS in the future is to be able to have a beneficial use project where we're not just flaring it, but flaring it is better than not flaring anything at all. So it's better for the environment if we do the minimum, which is flaring, but just know that we are right now actively seeking what that beneficial use will be. But at this time, other conversations are continuing with Doyon as to whether they're interested in increasing their capacity to take more landfill gas as the landfill grows and increases in size. More horizontal and vertical wells will be drilled, more landfill gas is collected. We've got the upgraded blower flare package put in place so that we're emitting less landfill gas into the atmosphere.
Thank you. You actually just answered my
Okay.
follow-up question, which was, is there a beneficial use? And apologies for asking you to dig into the archives a little bit, but why was there a 2019 court order? Like, what was the substance of that? Was that with respect to gas emissions from the landfill? And okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's exactly what it was.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting up to speed.
All right, myself, then Member Brawley, and then Member Constant. Again, quick questions relating to the additional flare. First off, will the cost for these the additional flares sort of fit within SWS's existing 2025 budget?
Yes, it is in the budget.
Great, thank you. And then the other question I have is, you mentioned Doyon may be interested in using more of this gas for their power generation. I mean, if they decide to go that route, I assume, but they will have to pay whatever additional costs for whatever infrastructure we had to add to the landfill. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. Member Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. I have a facetious question and a serious question. The first one is that an architectural rendering to scale? It's gonna be orange.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. No, but my serious question is, so it's interesting to put these two things together, this former landfill and the current one. So I'm wondering, this is just zooming way out from this leachate question, or from this gas collection, are there things that we can do at the current landfill to make, I guess first question is there some feasible future use for that land? Because I know many cities have built parts of their cities on landfill. I mean, a lot of Manhattan is landfill essentially, or filled in land. And just knowing that there's been kind of issues over the years with Merrill, because maybe no one thought, we need to think ahead to make sure that this land, or it just settles over time, right? But I'm wondering, are there potential future uses for that? And are there things we can do to kind of not pre-prepare it for development or something, but just to make sure that we're not giving ourselves a problem 30 years from now.
So thanks for the question. So recall that there is a regional landfill closure fund that was set up just to do exactly that. The great thing would be to be able to restore it to a nice park system or something like that, and then move on to build our waste to energy project where we'll be able to have something like Denmark. And the dream of having a ski slope would be amazing to be able to have that. But anyway, so something like Copenhagen. But yes, all of that is part of that closure fund plan. And that's also, why we want to look at what are our unfunded liabilities and how will we manage those in the future, which is a future conversation as well.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten a briefing, or maybe it's every year we get a briefing on that
Yeah.
closure. So that'll be useful whenever we have time for that.
All right, Member Constant.
Yeah, and the good news on the Anchorage Regional Landfill is it was built with best practices, unlike the one that is at Merrill Field, which it was just built in a free-for-all. And so there will be more opportunities with what's happening out at Anchorage Regional Landfill in the future because of that. I would note that any discussion about Doyen, their CEO is a friend of mine, and he is the board chair of organization I work for in my day job. And so he's not my boss. Boss's boss. And so just for the record here, and this is going to come up in a few conversations over the next couple weeks. So Ben, why don't you come in and just give us a very brief definition of the various types of settlements? Because one question that Aaron, you asked didn't quite get answered. It wasn't a lawsuit that we lost. It was a consent decree, meaning we came to a point where all parties agreed. And so would like you to define that a little bit for the members so they understand the mechanics of that.
Thank you, Member Constant, or Chair Constant, through the chair. What we entered into in this point was a compliance order by consent. The process there, and the municipality occasionally has these come up, is a regulatory agency, in this case, ADEC, found that they alleged a violation of some regulatory standard. Air quality was the particular point at issue in this case. The municipality had ongoing negotiations and conversations with ADEC to figure out if that alleged violation had actually occurred, if we agreed with it, to what extent we agreed with it. And the result of those negotiations was a compliance order by consent. It is an agreed agency order. It's amicable. Both parties say we admit to these specific facts, not necessarily all the facts that were originally alleged. And we agree that the parties, the ADC and the municipality, will take these specific sets of actions to in response to this compliance order. It's not necessarily admitting fault. It is just simply saying that we agree to do these things to ameliorate any problem which may have occurred. In this case, there was an allegation that there were violations of air quality standards. The facts admitted, there was not agreed that there was a violation of air quality standards, but either way, the municipality of Anchorage agreed that we would enhance our gas collection and control system at ARL. And so we are building the additional blower, the additional flare, and we will then just basically increase our capacity for landfill gas destruction. Whether or not Doyon increases their capacity to take gas for beneficial use, and we'll just be able to destroy more landfill gas, whether or not it's there.
One follow-up to that, what is ADEC?
Department of Environmental Conservation.
Oh, thank you. All right. I'm likewise learning the acronym soup, so thank you.
So,
I just want to note quickly, I do think we have one more topic you guys want to discuss. So let's try and wrap this piece of it up.
Good luck with that. I would note that
Have this if I need it.
that we also have consent decrees similarly with ACOSH on labor issues relating to worker safety, ACLU regarding sidewalks and who can sit where and when. And they do come up from time to time. And it's an important aspect of kind of getting to the solution. But I think it's hard for anyone to argue with the straight faces. They drive to Eagle River, to the Bear I know Wolf Den neighborhood, he used to call it Yellowstone, that there isn't an issue that has to be mitigated because sometimes there's one neighborhood that is inundated with the smell of gas. And of course, our friends at the landfill have told me that's the smell of money, which is fine from the utility side, but it is not great if that's where you live. And so anyhow, I'll just end it there.
Perfect, thank you. Moving along.
Just real quick, Deputy Municipal Manager Mark Spafford, if anyone is interested, like in the historical context, I've been trying to maintain, let the current staff there take those. But if anyone wants a history lesson on, how we got here with the Anchorage Regional Landfill, Merrifield, I'm happy to fill you in on that as much as you want to know. So thanks.
So continuing on with the Anchorage Regional Landfill, leachate collection, treatment, and discharge. So currently under construction are pond improvements. So we collect the leachate into several ponds. So we've added additional storage. We've added improved aeration to start some initial treatment of the leachate. And so now we're moving on to possible disposal. We've been there for a while, but we've gone through deep well injection, we've gone through evaporation, and now we're moving on to an advanced treatment option. And to start that off, we're studying leachate treatment through some bench scale testing and hopefully moving on to a diagram there, which includes some advanced treatment processes that are just kind of graphically shown. And so construction of the pond, this is a pretty recent photo. The pond in the forefront is pond number 2. It was expanded, and then pond number 1 is being relined, but not expanded. But the operation of the 2 ponds is being improved with a leachate loadout pump, so that when we load trucks up with leachate to transfer it out to the sewer system, it's better handling and safer operations. So moving forward, GCCS, so got gas collection and control system operation and maintenance. So we're going to have a request for proposal out there at a regional landfill and at Merrifield to help us better operate the system and to make some changes. So oftentimes we have to realign some pipe alignments or make adjustments, collect condensate, things like that. Our staff is inundated as it is in operating the landfill, so we need some additional support. So this contract will help with maintaining operation and making improvements to the field in both locations. Next, we're adding landfill gas monitoring for permit compliance. So it's one of the major jobs is to keep in compliance with our permits to avoid fines and violations and things like that. So we have a consultant on board that has specialized equipment such as drones to monitor, the field for gas, places where it's escaping, helps us monitor vacuum on the system so that we're ensuring that we're collecting the most gas that we can and helping us plan in the future about how to make improvements to the area to collect more gas. I believe that's the last slide.
All right, I myself, and then we'll go to Mr. Constant. Just a quick question, and then Member Baldwin. Just to make sure I'm reading this correctly, when we were talking about disposal of the leachate, I see lines through deep well injection and evaporation. So that is to say we have ruled those out as potential solutions?
We did, thank you. The deep well injection, and it gets a little bit complicated here, but as part of the compliance order by consent, we had to do a beneficial use project. And so what was identified was either a deep injection well or evaporation. And so working with the Department of Environmental Conservation and with our MOA council, we have worked through that process and we've eliminated both of those other options just because of viability, gas production, all of the things. And so we've settled on this opportunity where what we want to do is be able to reduce the volume by almost 90% and then be able to sequester the reject back into the landfill. So that is the plan. That's what we want to work on. We actually, Solid Waste Association of North America, our national trade association, actually teaches a 8-hour course that they're going to come up here and teach. And folks from the Department of Environmental Conservation are excited to join us in that course just to be able to learn more together. So they're definitely posturing in a more partnership perspective, which is great. So we're just going to move forward with this and we're gonna see if we can make this work here for Anchorage. And it would be really great if it worked, because I tell James all the time that he can make national waves, if we crack the code and make something that works for us and might work for other landfills throughout Alaska, and then potentially on a national scale, which would be really great.
It would be really great. Member Costa?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, you asked one of my questions. Thank you. On the next slide, what is GCCS?
Gas collection and control system.
And so there's a contractor that does that. It's forward. Go forward to
Yeah.
the last slide there.
Okay, so this one.
There. And you said that there is, or we're seeking a contractor to provide support.
Yes. So right now what we have is our operations staff out there. They pretty much deal with the day-to-day on landfill operations. But as the gas field grows and as the operations continue to get larger, we are going to need to add more capability to manage our gas field and the landfill gas field. So our first option is to do this request for proposal right now to get an operations and maintenance contract in place, and then further decide whether or not we're going to add more staff or how we're going to be structured in the future.
So what's the timeline for assembly action on that you imagine if there is a vendor that comes and is approvable?
That proposal is currently in purchasing, final draft. We made corrections last night and sent it in this morning. So I believe it's going to be advertised in the next several weeks.
So we could see something August, September is when we might see something. So you'll bring that back to us before. Okay, this is not counting as a preview.
No.
Okay, and then finally, the timeline of the consent agreement was 2019, you said? So it was ongoing before that. I know we've almost finished replacing the building that was demolished in the earthquake or destroyed by the earthquake. Is any of this kind of gas issue attributable to the earthquake?
Well, the gas collection system was affected by it for sure. I mean, whether or not it added to the settling of the landfill itself, I don't know that there's ever been any definitive conversation about what the settling looked like, but we do have volumetric reports that you can compare year over year how much settling took place. That might be an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, the settling and the production of the nuisance gas, the potential energy for the future gas, but when you don't have a system for it, nuisance, if it were a result of the earthquake, I know it's getting late in the game, but FEMA declared an emergency. And so I see Mr. Bowman wanted to say something.
That was actually, through the chair, that was actually one of the fact points of dispute in the negotiation, which eventually resulted, that wasn't able to be agreed upon with ADEC, that eventually resulted in the final compliance order by consent. So.
Right, and that's, the cause doesn't matter with DEC in the end. If the nuisance exists, it needs to be fixed so that people don't have to live in clouds of gas. But it's the payer is in the end the question. And so if there were some nexus to that line, DEC really isn't in that conversation. It's between the Muni and FEMA. And so, but if it hasn't been justified or justifiable, it's probably too late now. But it for sure seems like if you can draw a before and after analysis that showed in 2019, after the 2018 earthquake, things changed. Anyhow, just thoughts on capturing revenue.
Okay, Member Baldwin Day, take us home.
Thank you. I have a rather nerdy question. So based on the schematic in the last slide, it looks like we would be treating the non-concentrate, we would be treating the liquid with sodium hydroxide, and then the last little box says water tank for fire. Does that mean that the eventual treated water that would come out of that would be used for fire suppression?
So this was just a graphic that I pulled off the web. There's different
Oh, okay.
treatment methodologies that are used. Sorry, turn on the mic here. There's different treatment methodologies that some landfills use. We are looking at one of the main items here is the reverse osmosis, the RO unit that's there. That's what I was focusing on as far as the graphic goes. But the use of the water itself after treatment that is, open right now of where that goes. And it's currently part of the initial bench scale study is how do we deal with the treated product afterwards? There's different, permit methodologies that we can, that we're exploring during this initial phase to make sure that we have a plan that gets us all the way to completion.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And then my second question, what is the actual or the expected lifespan of ARL?
So you mean when were we expecting closure? The latest volume reports are somewhere between 70 and 100 years, but likely more towards the 70 years.
Okay, thank you.
70 years from now or 70 years from? All right. Anyone here for audience participation?
Wait, there's one point on that though, like the
Let
70
me
years.
just ask, I mean, are we all good going a couple minutes past 11:30 then? Because we are here at the,
Yeah, so this, but mine will be quick. The 70 years number, the clock ticking on the website, if it's still there or not, is completely flexible based on investments that we make. And so that's the part, it could be 150 years if we are savvy and do our job today. And so, or it could be 1,000-year experiment. And so let us be visionary.
Thank you. And to that point, more landfill life, projects that we do, the further it's going to push it out for sure.
all right, let me just check. Is there anyone online here for audience participation? Not seeing anyone. Okay, then. Well, with that, only 20 seconds. That's the deadline. We will adjourn. Thank you.